Welcome to the deep dive. You sent us a pretty dense stack of sources this time, all focused on a really tough, persistent global challenge.
Hmm.
How to fix healthcare systems that are, well, basically failing under their own weight.
Yeah.
So our mission today is to cut through that, looking at excerpts from Healing with Intelligence to understand not just the problem in a place like India, but, the actual mechanics of the solutions being proposed.
And that focus is so important. We're really zeroing in on this fundamental imbalance. You have these massive public health services set up with the best intentions, but they're just completely choked.
Overwhelmed.
Totally.
Right.
And on the other side, you've got private hospitals. They offer great care, but they're prohibitively expensive for most people.
Yeah.
So we're digging into how the system struggles and what practical process-level fixes could actually work.
Okay, so let's unpack that, because the source material is very clear. The core issue isn't really a lack of dedicated doctors or nurses, or even a lack of buildings. It's a systemic failure in how services are provided. It's a friction in the machine, how patients move, how care is coordinated, how costs just spiral.
Exactly. I mean, the landscape is huge, a massive mix of government hospitals, private clinics, local health centers. But the reality on the ground is stark. It's defined by just overwhelming volume.
And the text gives an example of this, right?
It does. A government hospital in Patna. It's a perfect case study. Patients show up at 6 a.m.
6 in the morning.
and they wait in line until 2 p.m. After 8 hours, many are just turned away. They've lost a day's wages, and they never even saw a doctor. That's just suffocating overload.
And that kind of experience has to push anyone with even a few resources towards the private sector. But that's where the system delivers what the researchers call financial shock.
It's a devastating mechanism.
Yeah.
I mean, it actually generates poverty. When an emergency hits, families are forced into these immediate, desperate decisions.
Like selling assets.
Selling assets, jewelry, land, or borrowing money from local moneylenders at these truly punishing interest rates. We're not talking bank loans. We're talking interest from 20 to 50% a year.
Wait, 50% interest? Just to save a life?
Think about that for a second. That's not just medical debt. It becomes a life sentence of poverty. The interest payments alone can trap families for years, maybe generations.
And even if a patient gets into a free government hospital, the sources say it's still not free. Where does that hidden cost come from?
They call it the travel tax. It's a great term.
Yeah.
If the nearest good government facility is, say, 20 or even 50 kilometers away, which is common, the patient has real costs.
Right, for transport.
Exactly. Maybe 100 to 500 rupees just for the fare. Plus, they lose a full day's wage, and so does the family member who has to go with them. So they're often forced to choose the public option, even with the awful conditions, because the private one is just completely out of reach.
This cost barrier leads directly to something called the diagnostic dilemma. And for you, the listener, this is maybe the most critical point because it just turns the whole logic of efficiency on its head.
It really does. Because patients fear the upfront cost of even simple tests. They just skip them. The text gives this example of a woman with irregular periods who avoids getting an ultrasound.
Okay.
And that avoidance means the diagnosis is delayed, it's incomplete. And here's the staggering calculation the researchers give us. Chronic disease prevention, if you catch it early, might cost around, say, 5,300 rupees over a couple of years.
Which is still a lot of money for some people, but manageable.
But because that patient avoided the early diagnosis, the disease progresses to a crisis, let's say a severe stroke. The emergency hospitalization for that jumps to a monumental 1,050,000 rupees.
Wow. From 5,300 to 150,000? That is a staggering number. So by making care expensive up front, the system guarantees astronomical costs later.
Precisely. It incentivizes the exact wrong behavior, leading to a system that is both ineffective and incredibly costly in the long run.
So we've established the outcome, the system collapsing under cost and volume. Let's shift gears now and look under the hood. What are the specific, sometimes mundane process failures creating all this chaos?
The primary culprit is fragmentation. And it's driven by this reliance on manual, paper-based records.
Just paper files.
Just paper files. When your records are on paper, delays and loss are inevitable. Departments end up working in these strict silos. The book gives an example of a patient. Let's call him Rajesh. He's admitted for a heart procedure.
Okay.
His cardiologist has one paper file. His eye doctor, who treats his diabetes, has a completely separate, disconnected file, even if they're in the same building.
So it's not just about dusty folders, it's that this physical separation of paper guarantees errors. What's the immediate result for the doctor trying to help Rajesh?
It's just chaos. Doctors have to rely heavily on the patient's memory, which, is often unreliable when you're stressed and sick. They end up repeating expensive tests because they can't find the old results.
And I imagine they miss critical history.
Absolutely. Things like a previous allergic reaction or a complex drug interaction. The patient's full story just isn't in one place.
So that failure to share information means that when a patient finally gets to see a doctor, that doctor has maybe 3 minutes to piece together a decade of history the system never bothered to connect.
And that leads directly to the next failure, rushed care. In busy government OPDs, that's the outpatient department, where the volume is insane, doctors are seeing 50 to 100 patients a day.
100 patients.
Which forces consultations down to 2 or 3 minutes.
2 minutes to decide someone's fate. That's got to be an impossible situation for the doctor, too. This isn't a patient failure. It's a system designed to fail everyone involved.
It's a systemic impossibility.
Yeah.
And it leads to these catastrophic clinical errors. The research highlights the case of a woman, Kavya. She goes to an OPD with chest pain. The doctor, working at this impossible speed, quickly diagnoses it as heartburn, prescribes some medicine. Because he didn't have time for a thorough history, for deep questioning, he missed the warning signs. 2 weeks later, she had a heart attack.
Something a 10-minute conversation might have caught.
Could have. And even if the doctor gets the diagnosis right, the failures continue. You see handwritten prescriptions that are illegible, leading to dosage errors.
And then there's the follow-up, or a lack of it.
Exactly. The adherence gap. Patients forget instructions, or they stop taking medicine because of side effects or because it's too expensive.
Yeah.
Let's go back to Rajesh. He skips his high blood pressure medicine because it made him feel dizzy.
Right.
But when he goes back for a checkup, the doctor has no way of knowing he skipped his pills. So the doctor just assumes the medicine isn't working, and what does he do? He increases the dose unnecessarily.
So the core diagnosis here is that the system is broken by these millions of tiny, manual, disconnected points of failure, which brings us to the solution the sources are really pushing for: agentic systems. This sounds very high-tech.
You'd think so, but they're actually the opposite of futuristic. They are practical, scalable solutions designed to solve these specific problems.
Okay, so what is an agentic system?
Think of them as smart helpers. They're autonomous, goal-oriented computer programs focused on a single task. And what's so interesting is the source material suggests they succeed, where these huge, centralized electronic medical record projects often fail.
Why is that?
Because they're small. They're goal-oriented. They don't require the entire hospital to change overnight. They just fix one point of friction at a time.
That's a key distinction. They're not trying to digitize everything at once. They're targeting the bottlenecks.
Yeah.
So let's see how they attack that queuing chaos from the Patna hospital.
That's solved by combining a queue and appointment manager agent with a triage agent. They get rid of that chaotic first-come, first-served line. The triage agent automatically sorts patients by urgency.
So red for emergency, yellow for urgent.
Exactly. Green for routine. The person with chest pain gets seen immediately, which is potentially life-saving. And the queue manager then coordinates their whole journey. It tracks them from the doctor to the lab to the pharmacy in real time. It just cuts out hours of needless waiting.
It respects the patient's time.
It does.
Okay, let's pivot back to that crippling financial shock. How does an agent fix the fact that medicine is just too expensive for people like Rajesh?
This is where the cost-aware prescribing agent comes in, and it's a game changer. When a doctor writes a digital prescription, this agent instantly searches for all available generic equivalents and their prices.
In real time.
In real time. It shows the doctor and the patient the lowest cost option right there in the local pharmacies.
So the doctor prescribes based on clinical need, but the system provides immediate financial transparency.
Precisely. And this could save a patient 50 to 80% on their monthly medicine bills. That transforms adherence because you're tackling the main reason people stop taking their pills. They can't afford them.
It turns healthcare from a crisis into a manageable expense. Okay, what about the internal chaos, the bed management problem, where patients are just stuck waiting for a room?
That gets fixed by the hospital bed manager prototype. It gets rid of the manual, error-prone process of staff running around bed hunting.
How?
It uses real-time status updates from nurses and housekeeping on simple devices. So the second a bed is cleaned, the agent knows. It then instantly matches a new patient's specific needs, like needs an oxygen bed or requires isolation, to the correct, clean, available bed.
So it just cuts out that delay. That's pure efficiency.
Pure efficiency. And finally, there's the failure of chronic disease management. the lack of follow-up that turns a manageable condition into a huge crisis.
Right. The system failed Rajesh by just assuming his medicine wasn't working. How does an agent provide that continuous support?
That's the job of the chronic disease monitoring agent. It uses simple tech SMS, WhatsApp, automated calls to act as a kind of gentle companion. It prompts the patient for daily or weekly readings, like blood pressure or sugar levels.
And what happens with that data?
It gives instant, encouraging feedback. But crucially, it only alerts the human doctor if a dangerous trend appears. If Rajesh's blood pressure is spiking 3 days in a row.
I see.
So it prevents those minor issues from escalating into that 150,000 rupee emergency. It's preventive medicine, automated.
So if we connect all these dots, the solution isn't really about demanding more money for more hospitals.
It's not. The argument in the source material is that the solution lies in giving the existing system an organized digital nervous system. It's about eliminating the friction, the error, the waste that comes from relying on paper and silos. It's about being smarter with the resources you already have.
And the financial incentive here is huge. The sources project a really high return on investment, right? Something like 200 to 300% for a typical hospital.
Yeah, and that return comes entirely from cost avoidance, fewer duplicate tests, less staff time wasted chasing paper, and most importantly, preventing those enormously expensive emergency complications. It actually makes the system sustainable.
It does, but fixing these deep process failures, it requires discipline.
Yeah.
And it requires transparency.
And that's the final provocative thought. When we start relying on these autonomous agents for critical tasks, like prescribing medicine or triaging a patient who might be having a heart attack, it raises this really important question, not just for the system designers, but for you, for all of us.
Which is?
How absolutely essential is it that we maintain a complete human-readable audit trail? A log that shows exactly which AI rule acted when it acted, and critically, when a human chose to override it.
So you can see the receipts, basically.
Yeah.
You see exactly what the AI did and why.
And when a human stepped in and said, no, not this time, that transparency, it isn't a technical luxury. It's the absolute key to maintaining patient trust and accountability in a future that's going to be full of automated care. That's the balance we have to demand.